Hey guys, welcome back. We were off last week. I was just on family vacation, but I'm excited to be back, especially today because this topic is something that hits really close to home because I had a bunch of roles throughout my career calling on IDNs and GPOs. So I'm really excited to talk about this, mastering the complex sales cycle, dealing with IDNs and GPOs. So we're going to get into that over the next hour. But again, before we do, always want to give a reminder for any of you on the call, please submit any questions that you have into the chat from this moment on. It could be something you were thinking about beforehand. It could be even a little off topic. That's okay. But I want to make sure that you guys are entering those questions in. And my podcast producer, James, will field those about halfway through the show where we have a little Q&A. So please make sure you're doing that. Also, as always, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Unfiltered Medical Sales Coaching. You'll be able to get all my content and especially all my recorded podcasts because I get requests from that all the time each week. So please make sure you subscribe. And today we are going live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And then we're also on every podcast platform, imaginable. So thank you again for joining. As I said earlier, I'm excited to talk about this topic. And again, the topic is mastering the complex sales cycle of IDNs and GPOs. So a lot of you guys that you may already be in this process right now, so you know how difficult this is. But for some of you individuals that are in the industry looking to make career pivots into hospital or the capital space, this is a very, very important topic for you to learn more about because every company, just to start off, everyone wants to get into the hospital space. The reason why they want to is because that's where the volume is. That's where you can make real money with products. They can do 1,000 times as many patients as they can in office-based sales. So it could take one or two hospitals or one or two IDNs that, really adopt your product and standardize it where it can make the company hit their number just with that account alone. So we're talking real volume. But of course, so is everyone else. If you're trying to get into it as a company, so is every other company out there. And every hospital is getting hit up by thousands of different companies, always saying that their product's the best and they want to get it approved. And it makes it that much more challenging, as you know. So this is not the space if you want a quick sale, get it done in a couple of calls, one or two calls, where like you are in office-based selling, where you could walk in today, never meeting the physician, and leave with him either prescribing your drug or scheduling to use your product on his next case. Excuse me. I've seen that happen. I've walked into many accounts in office-based selling where I got a sale that day. Some have taken me months, over a year, but selling to IDNs and GPOs, totally different story. You have to be prepared for a long sales cycle and to celebrate those small wins. So before we get into it, let's just start off by defining what these terms are for some of you out there that don't even know what I'm talking about. So first off, an IDN is an integrated delivery network, and a GPO is a group purchasing organization. So examples of some GPOs out there are Premier, HPG, Vizient, and some examples of IDNs. These are hospital systems. So it could be, St. Barnabas Hackensack. It could be Kaiser, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, Trinity, Atlantic Health System. So essentially what IDNs are, they're groups of hospitals that form together for more strength, essentially, right? And GPOs are the group purchasing organizations that help hospitals buy new products. So what exactly would it look like in a situation where you have the IDN, the GPO, and a vendor? So we're going to say Licata Medical is the vendor. The GPO that we're dealing with is Premier, and the IDN is Atlantic Health System. So Atlantic Health System will partner with the GPO for purchasing power. So the GPO doesn't just work with Atlantic Health System. They can work with 50 different hospital systems or more throughout the country. Now, the more hospitals that they have under their umbrella, the stronger is their purchasing power. So their primary goal is to negotiate with the vendors and try to get the best price imaginable for that hospital, for that IDN. Now, again, if they went into it just with one hospital that does, say, 1,000 cases a year, just to make numbers easy, there's only so much purchasing power that they can do with not having enough volume. So now if they have 1 million cases a year, now it's so much more appealing to the Licata Medical, because now I can give lower pricing, a better discount to them because they're going to have much more volume. So what the GPO does, how they interact with the IDNs, they are the group purchasing organization. So they do that. They negotiate with the vendor to get the IDN the best possible pricing. So they'll do that either through tiered pricing, meaning where they'll say to Licata Medical, okay, well, if we do 500 cases a year, or use your product 500 times by 500 units, whatever the unit is, then what is our pricing? Okay, so what if we do 5,000 in a year? What if we do 20,000 in a year? What if we do 100,000? And the company, Licata Medical, will have a tiered pricing set up. Again, I'm making up numbers, but it's tier 1 is $80 a unit, down to up to tier 4, which is probably $40 a unit, whatever the numbers may be. But there's an incentive for the hospital to use more of the product because they're going to get a better price. They also can get a rebate. So a lot of the GPOs, and this is legal, obviously, that they get a rebate at the end of the year based on how much they purchased or used throughout the year. So it gives them more incentive to utilize those products. And the way the GPO gets paid, they usually charge anywhere from 1.5 to 3% of the purchase that hospital's making, that they'll get that fee from the vendor. So that's how they get their money. They're making a couple percent, and then they're also making sure that the IDN they're tracking the analytics and making sure that IDN is purchasing or on par with the usage, so they can still get entitled to that best pricing. And the motivation for me at Licata Medical, if I want to be a part of Atlantic Health System and have them purchase our product, I want to negotiate with these GPOs. So at the end of the day, you have to spend money if you want to make money. So there's smaller companies out there that do not go the GPO route, and it's very, very difficult to compete, with some of the big companies out there, because they have a majority of the market share. So if you come in with one of your, little Me Too products and you're a small company, it's very hard to get access into these hospitals and these IDNs because they have contracts set up with these different bigger vendors. So the big part of the process. So if I walk in there into an IDN, again, it's a long process, guys. So you need a reason, of why you're there. Your product has to do something. And the first thing you need a champion. A champion is a physician or someone within the hospital that is going to push for your product. So they have to have reasons for using your product. It could be clinical advantages. It can be pricing advantages, or you could have a unique product that doesn't have any competition. But the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to have to get the value analysis committee, the VAC committee. You'll hear VAC, value analysis committee, where they have to be involved. And value analysis committee members they don't walk around with VAC badges that you're going to walk in the hospital and be able to see, oh, that's a VAC member. Like, no, they don't want you to know who they are. So as a vendor, it's very tough to get in front of these people, because they know the ones that once they know who you are, trust me, all the companies know, and they're constantly hitting up these same individuals that are a part of the committee. And they range from all different levels through the hospital. So there would be a clinical team. So there could be, chiefs of surgery. There could be a chief nursing officer. There's someone on the clinical end that's a part of that. There's someone's a part of finance. Could be a CFO or different financial team members. There's team members on IT. There's other team members that are a part of administration. So basically anyone that's going to be affected by this product coming in they're going to have representation on that committee. Okay. And the VAC committee doesn't meet every week, so they're going to meet maybe once a month, maybe once every couple of months. It's going to be different depending on each hospital. So you want to make sure that you're identifying the right individuals, because I've done this. I've made the mistake myself, guys. You're going to get excited when you get someone that's listening to you and that's, helping you promote your product. And at the end of the day, you could be calling on these same individuals and they have nothing to do with the VAC committee. They have no say. Now, it's nice it's always good to get more people on your side, but you don't want to waste months and months and months, it can be over a year, calling on individuals that really can't help you move the needle forward, and I've done that. So please don't make that same mistake. It's good to get information from these individuals, but you really need to know who the players are. Who are the contacts that are really going to, help get new products get approved. And those are the people you want to be talking to, and believe me, they're not going to make it easy for you guys. So that's why they're not going to go out and raise their hand. I'm the one you want to talk to. They're very secretive. They don't want to be bothered every day. But the more that you work your hospitals, the more that you get to know your customers and be able to really penetrate, you're going to find out that process and those team members. So that's key first, is finding out who they are first, because you don't want to waste time calling on individuals that can't help you move the ball forward. So first thing you want to do though is give an NPR, and that's a new product request. You want to be able to submit that. So they're going to evaluate that, and it's basically the justification for your product. What is the clinical need, the financial need, the ROI? You're going to have all that in your new product request. And then they're going to do an initial screening, to see if they have any other products that are going to, this is going to be a redundant product. Do they already have something like this? There's got to be some reason why they're evaluating this. And if they don't, they can reject it right away. They don't want a list of 50 Me Too products and then what happens is, and here's why there's a problem with that, because remember when I said at the beginning where they negotiate contracts at the beginning with the GPO, will negotiate that with the vendor. So they're going to promise a certain amount of value to give you a volume to give you a higher tier, which is going to give them better pricing. So now if doctors and surgeons and whoever is utilizing your product, if they have 50 to choose from, they're never going to be able to hit those tiers. They're never going to get the high volume. So then they're never going to get that best pricing. So hospitals don't want a whole list of products like doctors are going into a supermarket and pick what cereal they want to eat today. They don't want that. They want to give you a couple to choose from. So there's standardization. And that's a key term that you need to know. Standardization is basically what is the standard way of approaching a specific issue, or treating a specific problem within the hospital. So when something is standardized, that means it's going to be utilized throughout the whole IDN. And when you get that with one of your products, that's when companies are just doing cartwheels and backflips that they're out of excitement, because that's exactly where you want to be, where your product is the standard of use in that institution. That's how you get crazy volume. And that's where you want to be. So that's why the hospitals don't allow just any and every product. There's got to be a screening process to make sure, okay, this product is different for XYZ reason. Then they'll do a clinical review. This could take weeks, sometimes months, depending on how much data that they want to acquire. You want to make sure that you have evaluation sheets, guys, during this process. You don't want to get anecdotals that Dr. Jones said he liked it, and Dr. Smith, she really thinks it's great. No, you want to make sure that you have full evaluation forms that talk about The case they did, the date, their signature, their feedback, everything. You're always constantly collecting data with a new product, because if you want to get this approved, you're going to need that backup at some point. I don't care who it is. You can't go in there and say, I had 50 doctors tell me they loved it this past year. They're not going to care. You need the documentation, because you're going to compile this documentation during the clinical review part and get it to your champion, because your champion is the one that's going to help you get that product approved. They're going to present to the VAC committee. They're going to go to the meeting. Years ago, reps were allowed to go there. Those days are long gone. So you can't just put your best salesman up there, send them into these accounts and say, there's a VAC meeting next Thursday and he's going to get on the schedule and go in there. Never going to happen. So as a sales rep, you got to get your champion up to speed and make sure that they can really present your product. They're never going to be as good as you. But again, guys, you have to train them like that, because you don't want them going into meetings half-assed and they're not selling your product well. It's never going to get approved. Also, a key thing to remember is the timing. So if you have a VAC meeting next week, you want to be in there a day or two ahead of time, really prepping your champion. You want to schedule a meeting with them, take them to lunch, take them to dinner, whatever you can do to get the most time to make sure you have all the information. You have your evaluation sheets. You have your clinical studies, your white papers, whatever promotional material you want him to use or her to use in that presentation. You have to make sure it's airtight. And if you don't time it correctly, if you go see, again, I tell you these things because I made all these mistakes. If you go in maybe 3 weeks ahead of time and say, well, this is the only meeting I can get, I'm busy the next couple of weeks, he'll remember. The doctor's going to remember. They're smart. Guys, they have a million things on their plate. If you think you're going to prep them 3 weeks ahead of time and then they're going to go into a meeting and really sell it, it's never going to happen. So make sure you're going in there a day or two before that meeting. That timing is everything. If you get that timing down, they're going to be prepared and fresh. It's going to be fresh in their mind to really knock it out of the park with the committee. Okay. So then they will present to the committee and then they're going to vote on it. So obviously, depending on how that goes, that'll be the decision if you move forward or not. But let's assume that you are moving forward. So now they're going to set up a contract. This is all good stuff. Contracts are typically, they're longer periods. You don't want to get into anything less than 3 years. That's my opinion. You want to lock into longer contracts to really build utilization, throughout that IDN. So it's typically a longer contract. They will also, that GPO is going to help with monitoring the analytics, because again, if their usage isn't up, then they're going to fall into different tiers. And these are good things, guys, because this gives you reasons to meet with staff in the hospital, especially as a part of that IDN. These are key key decision makers that you can get in front of quite simply because they're falling below par. They're not, they're going to get a price increase if they don't start utilizing your products at what they agree to use them. So these are good meetings. A lot of reps get uncomfortable because it's like you're giving them bad news. No, because now you're a partner. You can't look at yourself as a sales rep. You're a partner that's trying to help your hospital get the best value, have them save money. Guys, helping hospitals and helping physicians, if you're ever in a conversation with them and you can clearly save them money or help them make more money, you're going to see how that conversation changes drastically. Now, we're all here to help patients. Doctors are here to help patients. And that's the most important thing. But they're here to run businesses. Hospitals are big business. If you can help them save money, that means more jobs. That means better healthcare that they can invest in. They can invest in better equipment. So all those things are vital to have that hospital or that IDN to continue going on. So to be a part of a financial conversation that helps them, it's a great place to be. So don't be intimidated by those meetings like you're giving them bad news. Look, as you're there as a consultant and as a partner to help them identify the issue and how they can drive that utilization so they can get better pricing. Okay. So, I mean, that's just a quick, walkthrough of how exactly these GPOs and IDNs interact with the customers. I know I went a little quicker than usual, but I wanted to take a minute right now. And James, if you can open up the floor to any questions, just to take a little break here.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me pull some up. What's the most common purchasing models used in IDNs?
Tiered pricing, I would say, is definitely the most common. It really makes sense for everyone because it gets the hospitals to utilize your product. You don't want to set up a 3-year contract for, say, you just, you don't have any tiers. There's no motivation to really want to use your product. So they need that motivation, and that financial motivation is always key to get best pricing. So without tiers, you can have hospitals that just use it haphazardly. They use it once in a while. That's not motivating for a company, and it's not going to be motivating for the hospital. So if you don't have a tier pricing structure in place, then it's very difficult to really drive utilization. So I think that's probably the most common, and typically it's 4 tiers. Tier 1 being the highest price, to tier 4 being best pricing.
All right. How does the decision-making timeline differ between IDNs and independent hospitals?
Drastically longer. Typically, I mean, that's, again, you're always going to hear about an anecdotal, I got it done in a month. The point is, guys, the more players involved, the more complicated the process. And especially IDNs. I mean, some of these IDNs, they're in charge of 200-300 hospitals. So these are big decisions, a lot of money on the table. They're going to make sure that they do their due diligence and make sure that these products are the right products. And they're going to do their best to get the best pricing. They're not going to just jump at the first price you give them, guys. They're not stupid. They know that everyone wants to, get in there. All these vendors are constantly coming after them because they have such great big buying power, and they're going to make sure that they get the best pricing for you, because that's why there's a lot of vendors out there that don't want to be a part of a GPO, because they don't want to drop their pricing so much and then have to pay GPOs their fee of a couple percent. At the end of the day, they say, well, this isn't worth it for them. So trust me, they're going to do their best to knock that pricing down.
All right. We have, how have IDNs and GPOs evolved over the last 5 years, and what trends are emerging?
I don't know if they've really, if there's any real trends that I know of that have changed the game. I just think the biggest challenge, whether you're calling on an IDN or any small community hospital, is access. So it's tougher and tougher to get in front of these physicians and in front of these decision makers to get your products approved. I mean, like I said at the beginning, we used to be able to go into VAC meetings and present our product. Now, this is what we do for a living, so we should be able to do this better than most people. Now we don't have that ability. There's no shot you're getting anywhere near a VAC committee meeting. So I think that continues to be the biggest challenge. Access is only going to get worse and worse. COVID, made it more challenging, but it was headed in that direction anyway. So it's the reps that can be the most creative and align whatever the hospital's real goals are. What are their initiatives? What are the points that they're looking to improve upon? It could be clinical, could be financial. So it's the company's job and the sales rep's job to find out what that is and then align your product as the solution. If you don't, they don't care. There's too many products out there just to get you approved because they like you. It's too much money at stake, and it's, again, this could be nationwide standardization, 300 hospitals. You better come up with a creative solution and tie into what their needs are, or it's never going to happen. So again, I know I went off a little bit, but it's really more, it's not about new trends. I just think the access is going to constantly get tougher and tougher. And that's the challenge to be able to overcome.
All right. We have Joe. How should stakeholders be prioritized in complex healthcare sales?
How should stakeholders be prioritized? Um, you mean calling on them as a sales rep?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. I mean, well, first off, you're gonna struggle the first few months, and this is where the persistence, and it's a long game, guys. So you don't walk into your hospital, in one call and exactly the way the process works, just like that. It doesn't happen like that. It takes time. There's times you work in weeks at a time and you're going down the wrong way, to try to get a product approved. And then you regroup because you speak to someone that says, I don't know why you're calling in that direction. Really, Bob Smith is the one that you have to see. He's the one that really will get this presented to to whoever it is on the IDN. So just be patient, be aggressive, be persistent, but be patient. And my advice is, while you're trying to find out these key decision makers and find out, how the process really works, you need to have a realistic timeline with your company. So whenever you're taking one of these roles, or if you're transitioning into a role that's calling on an IDN and GPO, you have to have the timelines really mapped out with your company and the expectations. Because if they think you're going to get things done in 3 to 6 months, and they want a lot done in that timeline, it's just not going to happen, guys. It's very hard to get things done that quickly in the hospital space. Most things, anywhere less than 9 months is challenging, but usually takes a year to 2 years to really make things happen throughout a territory, working with GPOs and IDNs. So I would say, more importantly, set the expectations with your with your manager, or whoever your boss is, a director or VP. Make sure you're on the same page, because they really need to know that. I'm telling you guys, a lot of companies, if you don't, the expectations will blow your mind, because I've worked with companies, I've helped consult with companies. And when I saw their timelines, I know they got shareholders, I know they got individuals financially that they have to, uh, you know, get, show the best results as quickly as possible. But the hospitals don't care about that. The hospitals have their own business that they're running, and they're going to have their own process and timeline. If you want to try to speed that up, it's okay to have a little bit of urgency, but you're not going to be able to just move and open doors just because the company, wants you to. So you got to be realistic, and you got to set that up initially with your manager, whoever your boss is, because it's going to be a very tough process when you constantly try to make your company happy and have unrealistic expectations.
All right. We got, what are the best ways to handle resistance from facilities loyal to a competitor?
Well, number one, you definitely don't, if they're loyal to someone, you don't want to come in there and start bashing. And I've seen reps do this where they don't know what else to do. They're frustrated, and there's one bad report about a product, or there's some, gossip about a rep doing something inappropriate, or you don't want to get into that negative game, because it's just like anything else, guys. You don't, when you're in an interview, you don't talk negative about your previous company. You don't talk negative about your competition. So do not go in there looking to be so combative against your competition. It doesn't work. They've worked with this individual for a long time. They could be close personal friends. They could be like family with them. I've seen those relationships get built. You come in and you start, tearing someone apart. It's just like someone talking about your brother or sister or mother or cousin. You're going to be insulted. You're going to get pissed off. So that's the last thing you want to do when you're first calling on a hospital. You want to just find out. My initial approach whenever I'm calling on these individuals is questions, questions, questions. Do not talk about your product on the first call. I challenge everyone to do that. Don't talk about the product on your first call. Your manager is going to say, this guy's an idiot. Don't listen to him. We spend too much money to get that lunch. You better bring up the product. No, listen to me. Try not to talk about your product. the more you don't, the more it makes the company, the doctor or the hospital want to know what you're selling, want to know what you're here for, But of course, if they keep asking, you're not going to say, I can't tell you, it's the first call. I mean, that's ridiculous. But you want to get as much information about them, make it all about them. And that only comes by asking questions. Continue to ask and probe throughout that first call like you've never done before. You want to learn as much as you can, and then you can align your product. So when they're using product X, because Steve is the best rep ever, and he's been here for 30 years, they love Steve. The product's been great. They never had a problem. Again, just find out, get as much info as possible. You will find an opening, and that persistence and constantly making it about your customer and what their key drivers are and selling to that. That's what's eventually going to get you in there, because something will happen. Something will change. Contracts come to an end where they open it back up. So now multiple people can apply for an RFP, a request for a proposal. So you can propose your product. So I've seen this, guys. They come up every couple of years. So it could just be 3 months away. And if you go in there bashing them, they're not even going to let you be a part of that RFP and present a proposal. So you can do that, and then all of a sudden now be the next one in line. So be patient, always be positive, always be nice about your competition, but ask as many questions and probe as much as possible, and try not to mention your product on that first call, and you're going to see how much information you gain.
We got how do regional versus national GPO affiliations impact the buying process?
How do regional versus national?
Yeah.
Well, typically it depends on it. Really, the simple answer is depends on the volume. So if you're dealing with a national IDN, they're going to have a lot of buying power. And, there's going to be vendors knocking on their doors. They're going to try to beat you up. I don't want to mention company names, obviously, but I remember working on a project with the Cleveland Clinic, and they gave the Cleveland Clinic such a ridiculous price for their product that they don't ever want that to get out, because once other hospitals or doctors know that, they're paying, say, instead of, $50,000 for the product, Cleveland Clinic was only paying, say, $20,000. And I'm making up these numbers, but it was a good price, and it did get out. So they gave the Cleveland Clinic an amazing price, which now they didn't want to get out, because once they tell companies or hospitals that they could go that low, every hospital, wants that price. So the big difference is national typically means more volume and more buying power to get better pricing, and smaller regional, they're not going to be able to typically get that kind of pricing.
We have what are the primary motivations behind purchasing decisions in complex health systems?
Say that again.
What are the primary motivations behind purchasing decisions in complex health systems?
Oh yeah, that's simple. It's number one is clinical value. What does your product bring? What clinical benefits does your product bring over the competition? And again, if it's nothing, then why are they meeting with you? So most companies should be able to structure and their product and position their product where they're really showing their benefits and reasons why they should be using this over the other competition. So clinically is number one, financially is number two. And again, you can argue that they're tied because we're assuming these products work. They go through all the testing, they go through all the research. A lot of them are very good products. There are a lot of Me Too products out there. So a lot of times it does come down to price. So if you had essentially two of the same products in the hospital's eyes, the companies are going to argue and say, ours is the best. No, ours is the best. Now the hospital is going to review it and say, they're essentially the same. Who could come up with the best price? And they're going to ask you for that. They're going to outright say, give us your best and final offer. Now you're not going to know what the competition offered. So you better really give your best and final, because if you're higher than the competition, then you're going to lose out. So again, this is more info, guys. the more knowledge you can gain through your contacts in your hospital and your relationships, this is key. Because if you have the two things they care about, pricing and clinical, and your clinical is going to match, now you need, the more that you can find out about what they're currently paying for another product, then you can, try to meet, or if your company doesn't want to play that game and say, it doesn't matter, we're not going to sell on price, that's their prerogative. But if you really want to get in with a lot of these big hospital system, pricing is going to come up. You're not going to be able to just charge what you want. So the more you know about that, the better you can position yourself where you're not coming too low and taking away all your margins too.
Joe, what common messaging mistakes derail high potential opportunities?
I think messaging mistakes that derail high opportunities, it's just over promising and under delivering. A simple way to answer that. You don't, you want to be able to be more specific on what your product, where your product really brings value in the hospital. You don't want to be too general that it's going to help, 500 different, therapeutic areas or patient types. The more specific that you are positioning that product, that it can really help a specific group of patients in that hospital, I think that's the best approach. Whatever your niche is that you want to go after, if you're the best at it, that'll give you a better shot at getting in than something that is too broad and could potentially get rejected because they don't really see that as a big fix. So I think being more specific is the key. And I think if you're going too broad, that can kind of derail your product getting approved. Also, if you don't have, all your ducks lined up in a row, like I said, getting back to the timing of those VAC committee meetings, you want to make sure that your champion has every piece of information going into that meeting. You don't want to go in with one study in their hands. You don't want to go in with just a couple pieces of information and hope they, you want to make sure that they really have everything, that so they're prepared for any kind of objection, because it could be one objection that you forgot to give the one study on. And just like that, the product can get denied.
Are there any risks of being over-reliant on GPO contracts?
Any risks of being, yeah, again, if your business for your company is 90% because of one IDN, of course. Because that GPO is basically controlling if you're going to be in business or not. So the more business, the more customers, you're going to have much more diversification, where if one contract does go south for one reason or another, or it doesn't get renewed, then you're not going to be out of business. So the more that you can have, the better, because things are going to change. New products are going to come out. There are new administrations going to come out for each of these IDNs. You could have had strong relationships that got you approved in the past, and all of a sudden a whole new regime comes in that doesn't want to meet with you because they have contacts with other vendors that they've worked well in the past. So if you have all your eggs in one basket and things go south, that's a big risk. You want to make sure that you're spread out more and have more working with as many hospitals and have good relationships with those associated GPOs.
How can success in one IDN be leveraged as a reference for others?
That's key. We've seen this many times where everyone is competing with one another. Again, their job as an IDN is to attract more patients. So if they get new, like for instance, when the Da Vinci robot first came out years ago, hospital systems were competing to who's going to get it first. Because now once they have that Da Vinci robot, they can market that. They could say, here's the safest new procedure for gallbladder removal or whatever case may be. Now patients are going to travel further distances to go get this safer procedure done at XYZ hospital. So it's huge in this space to get more products in one IDN as opposed to another. So they're always competing against each other. So the ones that can get those products first are going to help it's going to help market their value to patients better and drive more revenue. So that is key.
Joe, you said earlier not to bash companies that are loyal. How can we frame competitors' weaknesses without being negative?
Well, just constantly talk about your positives. What do you? I mean, simply, you don't say so and so's fat. You could say you're in better shape. I mean, that's a stupid analogy, but that's being negative. Talk about what's good about you and your product and how you excel, as opposed to talking about what's negative about the other company. I mean, this always blows my mind when I see political nonsense on TV where there's always one ad, that doom and gloom ad, where it's black and white, where they're talking about how bad the other congressman is, and it's negative. It's got that almost like horror movie narration, and then they go to their congressman, and all of a sudden it's bright, it's color, it's happiness. And I never understood how that works. When we all learn in sales, don't ever bash your competition. Just talk about what's good about you. And I think if you focus on that, and it's okay to compare, you're not saying they're bad, but your procedures are X amount faster, or you provide X amount more safety or better outcomes. Again, you're not bashing them. You're talking about what's good about you. So focus what's good about your product, and it should never come out of your mouth that they suck or this is dog shit or whatever. You don't want to ever do that, guys, because they will not talk to you again. Especially, nobody wants to listen to someone be negative about another company or another individual, and you never know who they know. The last thing you want to do is insult a friend of theirs. You'll never get back in there.
What are creative ways to re-engage a cold or unresponsive account?
I think one of the key things everyone should be doing is leveraging your current relationships and supporters, because they know other doctors, they know other hospital systems. It's always great to have that information. The toughest sale is getting that first one, getting that first IDN to buy, working that first contract with the GPO. That's the toughest one, because they all, especially in the hospital space, these IDNs and all, they all want proof of concept. The more data that you can throw at them, and especially if it's someone else they know or they have good relationships with, other hospitals that they respect, other hospital systems they respect, that goes a long way. I mean, I knew that, again, not to give names, but there were certain hospitals that we could talk about our product being used at, that doctors would go crazy over, and they loved it. And then we wouldn't mention other ones that could be a smaller hospital or just not as prestigious. You don't even bring it up because the doctors, they don't care about that. They want to hear about the big teaching institutions or, whatever groups or individuals that they really respect. So it's the same with hospital systems. You can utilize your relationships, with your current customers to help drive more business. Get those referrals. If you can get someone that, for instance, if you got a chief of surgery that's using your product at whatever IDN, and you can get that individual to reach out to someone personally at the IDN you're trying to get into, I mean, that's fantastic. That's amazing. That's not easy to do, but you want to utilize your relationships and use those referrals just like you would in any other way in business. Do the same thing. Even though you're dealing with big hospital systems, it can go a long way because a lot of them do respect what other institutions do.
What are some key questions reps should ask themselves before engaging an IDN?
Is number one is finding out what the process is. What is you want to respect that process. So simply saying that I'm here to respect your process and find out exactly, what happens from presenting my product to getting it approved, to getting a contract signed and getting it utilized and hopefully standardized in your hospital. Walk me through that, and you're going to get people, Joe, I'm sorry, you're talking to the wrong person. Who could I speak to? You're always trying to find out who's the right person, who else would know about this, who in the department. Start with that department first. You're not going to walk right into the IDN and director of supply chain and get an answer. You could, but odds are you're not. So it's a networking game. It's a fact finding. It's almost like a scavenger hunt where you're constantly getting the next piece to move on to the next level. And that's the way you got to approach it. So find out, what is the process? Who do I speak to for X, Y, and Z? Those two simple questions, it's a fact-finding mission, guys. That's more important at the beginning than just getting out there and trying to present your product. Because if you're not presenting it to the right people and you're not following the right process, then it doesn't make any sense. You're not going to get anywhere. So find that out first, and then you'll be successful.
What are some typical red flags that a deal is stalling in an IDN?
Well, a lot of times, number one, when no one's getting back to you, when your same advocate or champion has gone radio silent, that's obviously not a good sign. And it does happen a lot. VAC committees get canceled, they get postponed, or the doctor was unable to present. Because the real thing that happens a lot, and I've had this happen many times, I met with the champion the day before, all ready to go. He has an emergency, doesn't make it to the VAC committee. That happens. I mean, you can't control a doctor's schedule. They get stuck in cases late. There's emergencies. Things come up. They're going to miss VAC committee meetings. So things like that happen, but you always want to move the ball forward. When you're stuck in the same position month after month, that is a red flag. It's okay. I'd rather get a no. I'd rather get a denial, because trust me, when you're dealing with your company and a no, straight up, Joe, it got rejected by the VAC committee, it's never going to get approved, at least not in this go around. I'd rather have that than the ghosting, not knowing where you are, not knowing if you're moving forward, because that's frustrating, not only for you, but you're going to have to relay that message to your company. And after a while, they're going to be like, what the hell is going on, Joe? So when you're stalled with the movement, and set those small goals, you're not going from getting a contract signed as the next step. You need small movement. Was the clinical evaluation done? Was the product presented to the VAC committee? What are some of the things in between that you can set those smaller goals that you can at least measure? So then if things aren't happening, like, okay, well, this was never even presented. So where to go back for. So it's not just all or one, did I get the deal or not? You need those small steps in between. And if they're not happening, that's a red flag.
Okay. What are some of the more valuable analytics reps should bring to the hospital or system?
Well, I think a lot of patient outcomes data. I mean, that's what drives a lot of these decisions for IDNs. So to have that data, I can't say that enough. The more data you have about outcomes, clinical outcomes, and that results into dollars, that's very important. So if you could show clinical data, clinical outcomes, and also have an ROI on why it benefits both clinically and financially to use your product, then that's the winning combination, guys. If you don't have the two, it's hard to justify. You better have a really outstanding clinical product that is so far superior, to everything else, if the financial doesn't make sense, or vice versa. You need the clinical has got to be there. They're not going to ever, pay a cheap price for bad outcomes. So the outcomes have to be there. But if you're going to have higher pricing, you're going to need superior data, because that's the only way they're going to get that approved. There's no reason for them to approve it if they got other products that are doing the same thing. So I would focus on those two areas, clinical and financial data, and as much as you can get. You never can have too much data, because that's what the hospital is going to want to see.
How can salespeople equip champions with the right tools for internal selling?
Well, again, it's just like I said, is getting that information to them in a timely manner where they're prepared. You don't want to throw all that out on the day before, but you want to make sure that they go in with the key points. And you also want to help them with those studies, with those white papers, to get to the point where it's not, because doctors are going to get lost. They got too much to do to sit there and then learn how to present this study to the VAC committee. Get to the main area in the study, truly have it marked in there with a bookmark of what the paragraph or the table or graph you want them to go to make it simple for them. So to me, that is the key. You want to give them as much data, but you don't also want to overwhelm them. You want to make it easy, stepwise process, where you present these couple of things. If this objection comes up, you can go here. If that comes up, this is a common objection, go here, pricing here, and make it simplified, but help create that first, give them time to review it. And then you're in there the day or two before, like, okay, this is final exam time. Are you ready? Because you're going in there tomorrow. I want to make sure you're prepared, and walk through some of those things with them to make sure they know where everything is, and then they'll do well. But as much data as possible, but just, again, help them simplify the data so you don't overwhelm them.
How should renewals be approached in a multi-year IDN contract?
Well, you want to be proactive. You don't want to get a contract signed and then disappear and then show up a month before the next renewal. You're constantly working with your IDNs. I worked with many companies that did this very well, where you want an excuse to meet with some of these department heads, with some of these hospital administration individuals that you're analyzing, you're showing them the analytics, you're showing them the data. So typically I would like to see a biannual review. If you sign a 3-year contract, you want to be in there twice a year minimum. Could be once a quarter, where you're going over the analytics, showing them the ROI, showing them the positive work that your product's doing for that hospital, the money they're saving, or the clinical outcomes that they're getting, and having that built up over time, because you're going to have those meetings and then you're going to be ahead of the game when the renewal is coming. You're going to be in there way more than a couple months ahead of time. You're constantly in those institutions, in those places every quarter, every 6 months, doing these reviews. So you're going to be ready and well ahead of the game. And that's the key. So make sure that you're setting those meetings up well in advance when you're getting these contracts signed, and say, here's how we work with our institutions. We're going to be coming here at the end of every quarter, giving you a presentation, going over the analytics, for partnering with XYZ product, and walking them through that. Because you do that, you're going to be ahead of the competition and be in the driver's seat for that renewal, hopefully.
Joe, are there any risks of relying too heavily on a single advocate or single champion?
Oh, absolutely. It's not, guys, I'd like to say it's easy to say, always have a backup, always have multiple champions. I mean, it's not easy. There's guys that just aren't going to be as passionate about your product, or might not have as much say in your department. There could be 1 or 2 individuals that, really you need them to go speak on behalf of your company to get your product approved. And if a champion does fall to the side, again, you have no choice but to find somebody else. But it's not that easy where you're realistically going to have 3 or 4 backups if something fails. You don't want to see that happen. It sucks when it does. It's always good to be able to have as many supporters as possible. And you could get this during the evaluation phase, where there will be other champions that come out of the woodwork because they just love your product. So it's always good to be networking and speaking to those individuals and building those relationships too, in anticipation your champion doesn't, work out. But that's easier said than done. So always have a backup, but the best thing to do is network as much as possible, because you never know if the 1 or 2 individuals aren't going to come through in the end.
To follow up on that, can you erode trust by having multiple champions?
I don't think, you're going to go in with one one champion, one individual that's gonna go to the VAC committee for you. So you're gonna have their one guy that you're like, all right, you're my guy. You're the one that's going to present. You're the one that's going to talk to these people. But it's always good that you're not going to the other ones, other leaders, and saying, oh, by the way, you're my number 2, and Dr. Smith is my number 3, and Dr. Jones is my number 4. You're not going to ever do that. So I don't think there's that risk where you're essentially trying to sell your product. They know what you're trying to do. So any good rep is going to try to build as much enthusiasm and support. So I don't think, unless there's other things going on behind the scenes where a doctor is going to get pissed off at you for trying to reach out to other doctors to gain support of the product. No, I don't think. I think if the doctor said, I'm the one that's going to present this to the VAC committee, and you go, oh, okay, great. And then you're blatantly trying to get other doctors to go to the VAC committee after he said he would, then that's a problem. But to always build relationships and commitment and support from other doctors, I don't think you can worry about other doctors getting mad at that. That would be, you're never going to be successful unless you get that support anyway. One doctor is not going to make or break you long term. So you're going to need that support anyway. So I wouldn't worry about that.
And the last question I got for you, Joe, how are decisions typically escalated when a VAC committee is deadlocked?
Well, I mean, they're basically, a deadlock is going to be, they're going to want more information. They're going to need more verification. It's almost like in a court case when they're deadlocked. They're going to, the judge usually sends them back and tells the jury, please talk about this more. The jury asks for more information, and then they try to come up with a verdict. So it's the same thing here. They're basically saying we need more info, and that's not a bad place to be, guys. It's frustrating because you want that approval, but you realize you're close. So the more that you can find out what they want or what some of the objections are for not approving this, you want to find out that information and get the info there, because I personally think that's a great place to be. That means you're teetering on getting a yes, and just do your due diligence to find out what more do they need to see, and then working with your company and your support staff to get that to them to get the decision. So I think that's a good place to be.
Yeah, that's all I have for you today, Joe. No more questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, guys. Thank you, James. I know this is a little bit more of an advanced topic, but again, we're going to be doing these every Monday. So podcast every Monday and Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to do advanced topics on Mondays and a little bit more entry level on Wednesdays, and more about breaking into the industry. So please continue to follow, continue to support. I want to thank everyone for joining. Thank you all again for asking those questions. Just as a reminder, please, if you want a copy and if you missed this, please go and subscribe to Unfiltered Medical Sales Coaching. And also, if you want any one-on-one coaching and be a part of the RepPath Academy, please reach out to me. Contact me at joe@reppath.com, or you can message me on LinkedIn to learn more about the RepPath Academy. And for anyone that wants additional discounts, especially any lobby members out there, please give the promo code Licata. That's LICATA, and you'll be able to get additional discounts. So just DM me, reach out, send me an email, whatever works best for you. Shoot me that promo code Licata. You'll get additional discounts. And if you just want to learn more about the RepPath Academy, feel free to reach out anytime. I want to thank everyone again for joining us, and I'll see you guys this Wednesday at 3 p.m. And hopefully, you guys are able to join each week. So thanks again, guys. Have a great week.